Hi, welcome to our 2023 Favorite Books for Adults presentation. I'm Allison Cochran. I'm an adult advisory librarian with the district, and I'm going to kick things off. The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. Okay, first of all, I picked it for this cover because I just loved it. This is a story of a native family from Nova Scotia that goes every summer to pick blueberries in Maine. But one year, their 4-year-old youngest daughter goes missing, and after a long search, they return home to Nova Scotia heartbroken. But don't worry, because in alternating chapters, we also learn about a young girl growing up in Maine who doesn't look exactly like the rest of her family and doesn't feel like she quite fits in. We, the reader, know that the girl's okay, but we don't know how that all happened. And this book isn't really like a thriller about a missing person. It's more about the repercussions for the family in Nova Scotia and for the family in Maine. It's a beautifully written, character-driven book, and it was just also named one of Amazon's best books of 2023.
Hi, my name is Erica. I am a teen services librarian, and I'm going to be sharing some young adult or YA books that have great adult appeal. This is my first one. This is Warrior Girl Unearthed by Angeline Bully. She is the author of Firekeeper's Daughter, which was published in 2021. Also a fantastic read. If you haven't checked that one out, you absolutely should, but you don't have to have read it to enjoy Warrior Girl Unearthed. In this book, we have a mystery that's filled with suspense, much like Firekeeper's Daughter. Our main character in Warrior Girl is Perry, who planned to spend a lazy summer fishing, while her twin sister participated in the Ojibwe tribe's summer internship program. Her sister Pauline's always been the go-getter of the two, while Perry is a little more looking to, well, just go fishing. But after she gets into a car accident and her aunt covers the cost of repairs for the car, Perry doesn't really have a choice and has to enter this internship program. She ends up interning with the Tribal Museum, whose main goal for the summer is to try and recover cultural artifacts that a neighboring college has basically been holding hostage for years. They've just found ways to not return them. And while working on this project, Perry ends up drawn into a mystery that revolves around the stolen ancestral remains, artifacts, and missing and murdered Indigenous women. This was beautifully written and deeply relevant to a lot of things that are happening now.
Awesome. Okay, I'm Julia. the adult advisory librarian alongside Allison at ALD. And I'm excited to talk about Hello Stranger by Catherine Stenner. This is a fantastic 2023 release from Catherine Stenner, who is also the author of The Bodyguard and Happiness for Beginners, that was recently turned into a Netflix movie, if anyone has heard of that. This particular book, Hello Stranger, is about Sadie Montgomery, an artist who just placed as a finalist in the North American Poetry Competition. Yet, this exciting news is quickly overshadowed when she winds up in the hospital with a condition known as face blindness, which she is told, in an ever-convincing manner, is probably temporary. Now her work as an artist, more specifically a portrait artist, is in jeopardy right at the biggest point in her career. It turns out that while she still has her sight, the face blindness causes every face she sees to look like a disjointed puzzle of random features that don't quite fit together. As Sadie navigates this turn of random events, along with her ever-present family issues, she actually falls in love with not one, but two men. Her life has never felt less clear, but maybe, just maybe, there are some new ways to see the world around her. This book is everything you want in contemporary fiction. It has lovable characters, romance, engaging dialogue, and a deeper plot that extends beyond just a love interest. I also appreciate how the last several books I've read by Stenner, including this one, have a plot twist that genuinely surprised me, so that was fun. One of my top reads of 2023. I can't recommend this one enough. That's Hello Stranger by Catherine Stenner.
Hello, I'm Kelsey. I'm the adult reference librarian at Coble Library. I'm going to be chatting with you today about a couple fantasy books because that's my jam. And the first one is The Adventures of Amina al-Serafi by Shannon Chakraborty. Amina al-Serafi is a happily retired pirate enjoying motherhood and the simple life, but a wealthy merchant tracks her down and offers her a job so lucrative that no true bandit could turn it down. Amina sets about getting the gang back together for one last high seas adventure, but of course, things are never as straightforward as they seem. Those are familiar with Chakraborty's previous trilogy, The City of Brass or the Davenport trilogy, will definitely recognize her layered characters and her fabulous world building. This has both of those, but in here she also adds in a lot of really excellent historical detail about the Indian Ocean during the medieval age, which I really appreciated. And I just love the chance to root for a fantasy heroine who was in her 40s and a mother, and really fighting to have both a family life and the pirate life. And this just felt like the perfect book to sweep you away into another world.
I know I spent a lot of time with a map out of the Indian Ocean when I was reading it also.
And I'm Pamela, recently retired librarian from the Arapahoe Library District. This is the mostly true story of Tanner and Louise by Colleen Oakley. This is just really fun if you would like something a little bit lighter. After a recent fall, Louise Wilt's daughter insists that her 84-year-old mother have a full-time nanny living with her. And at the same time, after her parents kick her out, 21-year-old Tanner Quimby needs a place to live. And so this multi-generational match is made. The two start off their living arrangement happily ignoring each other, but Louise has a backstory, possibly involving a long ago jewelry heist. And Tanner learns about it when Louise suddenly appears in her room at 1 a.m. with her suitcase packed, insisting that they leave town immediately. Tanner gets behind the wheel of Louise's classic car and they're off. This is a very entertaining road trip adventure. Peopled with two women the reader grows to know and care about. It's loads of fun, but also a touching story of friendship between two women who just happen to be from very different generations. The Mostly True Story of Tanner and Louise by Colleen Oakley.
Hello, my name is Liz. I am the new assistant supervisor of the Sheridan branch, and today I have a few of my favorites that I've read this year. The first one I am going to talk about, which is still on the hold list, is The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. Now, we normally don't discuss the fourth book in a series, but this is the exception. So this is the fourth book of the Thursday Murder Club series. It continues with our group of junior detectives who live in a retirement home in the southeastern United Kingdom: Elizabeth, Joyce, Abraham, and Ron. In this contemporary mystery, the gang is looking into the case of a friend of Stephen's, who is Elizabeth's husband. Kuldish Samara was found murdered in his vehicle and was a well-known antique dealer who might have done some shady dealings recently. So normally Elizabeth is the ringleader of this group, but has to take a step back to spend time with her husband, Stephen, while her friends step up and take charge in solving this case. The one thing I really love about this series is not only does it feel like a cozy mystery, but you can really grow and get to know these characters really well, even though they become really good friends with different backgrounds. And they really just support each other when life gets bloody. So I do highly recommend this book. However, I will say that there are a few trigger warnings for this book, such as talk of suicide, Alzheimer's, and drug use.
All right, my name is Tanya, and I am a children's librarian here at Arapahoe Libraries, but I also have a passion for reading adult and teen books, which is what I'm sharing today. This one is Have I Told You This Already by Lauren Graham. This is for those of you who are looking for a light and funny read. So Lauren Graham is an actress, and she's most known for playing Lorelai on Gilmore Girls, and this is her second book. I will say her first book, Talking as Fast as I Can, I liked that one a little bit more. That one dove more into Gilmore Girls, but this one was just as funny. And she does read the audiobook if you enjoy audiobooks. So this book consists of short, funny stories about Lauren's life, loves, career, and more. Lauren is so down to earth and likable that you'll want to be friends with her by the end of the book. She shares stories about what it was like working with other famous people, her time working at Barney's, and what it's like being a star in Hollywood.
Okay, we have a couple of other nonfiction titles to share with you quickly. I'm Pamela. You have the
Yes,
wager?
I know a lot of you have probably heard me talk about The Wager before. It was probably one of the best nonfiction. It definitely was one of the best nonfiction books this year. It's the latest book by the author of The Killers of the Flower Moon, which you all know is now a movie. So this is his current book. It tells the story of the ill-fated HMS Wager, the ship here. It was a British man of war that met its tragic end off the Patagonian coastline in 1741 during an imperial conflict with Spain. But more than just another story of shipwreck and survival, mutiny and murder, Gran explores the nature of truth and the role of storytelling in establishing what becomes history. The Wager by David Gran.
Okay, so round here and over yonder. It's if you want something light and fun to listen, especially listen to, read, yes, but listen to the audio book. This is by two self-described progressive hillbillies, and they go on a lengthy road trip, first around the South, then around the rest of the US, and then finally to England and Scotland, and talk about their adventures and what they meet and what they expected and what was different, whether it's food, customs, scenery, shopping. Yes, they do talk about the Blue Horse at the Denver airport. It was a delight. It really got me out of a reading slump at one point as I was just lying in bed listening to this. So for a good laugh, check this out. And the other one we have here is The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. This one is the story of a man in Europe who stole over 300 pieces of art. And he actually was caught a couple of times and released, and then he'd do it again. Why we like this one, it's a current bestseller. We sometimes describe books as being nonfiction that reads like fiction because they're such great stories. You have to keep reading and turning the pages. And this is a perfect example of that.
This is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is historical fantasy romance, or romantasy, as I just recently learned from Goodreads is a term. When the story begins, a war has broken out between gods, and they are using human armies to battle each other. And so when her brother enlists in one of those armies, and Iris's mother loses her job, Iris quits school to start working for a local paper. She works really hard to get the good stories, but she has a rival, as you may have guessed from the title, Roman, who is pretty rude and also maybe pretty handsome. They butt heads quite a bit. And while things are a little tough at work, they're even more tough at home, and Iris finds solace writing letters to her brother, who is in the war in the front lines. She doesn't have an address for him, so she starts sliding them under the door to her closet and is super surprised, understandably, when they disappear. She's even more surprised when other letters start appearing in their place from an anonymous person that she thinks she's never met. If you've guessed that that anonymous writer is Roman, you are right. The two start exchanging letters and they become closer until Iris receives devastating news, quits her job, and moves to the front lines, where she seeks out a job as a war journalist and tries to find her brother. This was a really beautiful enemies to lovers romance with a hint of magic, really great world building. And I'm very excited because the second book in this duology, Ruthless Vows, will be published the end of December.
I loved that one too, Erica. I'm glad you shared about it. The next one that I'll be talking about is from the acclaimed New York Times bestselling author of A Woman Is No Man, Etaf Room, exploring the expectations of women, particularly Palestinian American women. Evil Eye follows Yara as she seeks to trailblaze a new future in the US that feels more rewarding than her mother's life path. Yara is able to complete her degree, work, and raise her family. However, she still struggles for it to feel like enough. When her mother begins blaming a family curse for all Yara's current woes, Yara must face her fears buried in an unresolved past because now they are impacting her and her daughter's present. The conversations around womanhood, mother-daughter relationships, racism, and learning how cultural and childhood experiences impact our lives are incredibly powerful in this book. While this is certainly a hard read, especially for those familiar with mental health struggles, It beautifully delves into working through past traumas, the impact they have on the present, and how navigating cultural expectations can both exhaust and inform. I was quickly drawn into the lives of these characters, feeling deeply what they were navigating, and I know that they are going to stick with me for a while. Definitely recommend this to readers who appreciate literary fiction and delving into the mental landscape of the main character. You definitely get that in this read. This one is well done and definitely topped my list this year as one of my more thought-provoking and engaging reads. And that's Evil Eye by Etaf Rum.
Julia, I'm so excited to read that one. It's on my list, but I'll have to move it up the list now.
Yes.
Okay, so next I have God Killer by Hannah Kaner. This is a debut work by a UK author that sort of flew under the radar here in the US, but I thought it was a really excellent little fantasy. We follow Kissin, whose family were killed by zealots of a fire god, and now she makes her living killing gods, and she enjoys it until she finds a god that she cannot kill. Skedi is the god of white lies, and he has somehow bound himself to a young girl named Inara, and they're both on the run from unknown assassins. Kissin, Skedi, and Inara are joined by Elogast, a disillusioned knight on a secret quest, and all of them must travel to the ruined city of Glenradin to beg a favor from the last of the wild gods. A few of my favorite things about this novel, it definitely had some like really old school fantasy vibes. It's a queer normative world. It's got that found family element that I'm like a total sucker for. And finally, the page count it's only around 300 pages, which is pretty short for a fantasy. So I think it would make a great intro to the genre for those who, are maybe curious about fantasy, but not wanting to commit to the typical like giant chunky 500 pages. And the sequel is coming out in February, which I'm so excited about.
Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This book is for you if you enjoy trying something new and offbeat once in a while. You can just tell that from the cover.
Yes.
I turn to books by Scalzi when I want a bit of intriguing sci-fi. And this latest very smart foray into the world of supervillains is big fun. Charlie is a divorced substitute teacher living with his cat. Don't forget the cat. In a house his siblings want to sell, but all he wants is to open a pub downtown if only the bank will approve his loan. Then his uncle Jake dies and leaves his estate to Charlie. Charlie thought his uncle owned parking garages, but it turns out Charlie inherits Uncle Jake's supervillain business, complete with an island volcano lair, talking spy cats, and security dolphins. And he's in the midst of a war with some very evil supervillains. So even though he has what it takes to defeat the evil villains, does Charlie really want to be a supervillain in spite of the money and Caribbean island? If you liked Hench, one of my 2020 favorites, wish your cat could talk, or are intrigued by unionized dolphins, you'll have a lot of fun with one of Scalzi's best.
Who doesn't like unionized dolphins? Wow. Much more serious here. This is The Frozen River by Ariel Lahan. It is historical fiction, and it's based on a real-life woman, Martha Ballard, who was a midwife in Maine in the 1780s. She kept extensive journals, the real Martha, extensive journals of all of her cases, including when there was a murder in town, and she was called upon as really the only medical professional of sorts around to determine the cause of death. In the fictionalized account, we learn a lot more about Martha's family and all her different cases and the women in town as she gets involved. It's set during the winter, and you need to wrap yourself up in several blankets as you read this, because you will feel the chill coming through. You're going to love Martha and her family, but you will not like the powerful men in town who may have been involved in the murder and are trying to get rid of Martha. Really loved this book. wrap yourself up, like I said, and enjoy.
All right, this is The Davenports by Crystal Marquis. This is the first in a series, and I just found out today that the second is scheduled to be published in June of 2024. So very excited for that one. Even has a cover reveal already. This is historical fiction mixed with family drama and romance. It's set in 1910s Chicago, and the book focuses on the three Davenport children, Olivia, John, and Helen, as well as Olivia's best friend, Ruby. The Davenport father, William, is a formerly enslaved man who established his business in Chicago and built up his wealth. Children of wealthy families at the time had a lot of pressure to maintain appearances and protect their reputations, and that's especially true for the Davenports as one of the few wealthy Black families in the area. So Olivia is expected to make a good marriage, and everything seems to be on course until she meets an activist she can't stop thinking about. John is an entrepreneur who is expected to continue their family's legacy, even if he might want to marry somebody who's below their station. And Helen has just as much pressure as Olivia to make a good marriage and be conform to some of those gender norms of the time. But she finds every excuse to skip out and work in her brother's garage because she can't imagine ever wanting to do anything more than she wants to work on engines. Reviews have compared this book to Bridgerton, though far less steamy, a little bit more appropriate for a younger reader crew. It's also loosely based on a real family from the time period, the Pattersons, which I thought was really interesting, and I went and looked them up after finishing the book. So if you enjoy romance with some family relationships, this would be a great one for you.
Okay, I loved this one. The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brommer is like a heartfelt hug after a particularly hard day. This book centers around Clover, who has spent years learning about death. After experiencing death throughout her life and then hearing that her grandfather passed away alone while she was traveling, Clover decides to embrace a new career as a death doula. This means Clover helps people peacefully navigate the end, holds their hands, processes life with them, and ultimately ushers them into what's next. The problem for Clover is that sometimes her commitment to the job keeps her from fully living her own life. This book is fantastic. It is heartfelt, challenging, sweet, and genuine. The storylines felt realistic while still remaining hopeful. There's heartbreak tempered with hope and a cast of characters that felt honest, flawed, and yet endearing. They felt believable, which was really enjoyable while reading it. There were so many quotes that I wrote down from this one and a plethora of wisdom that I gleaned from the characters. I definitely cried some happy and sad tears with this one. Perfect for fans of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine and The Reading List. This book was one of my favorites from the year, and I highly recommend The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brommer.
All right, this is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This was my first Alex Harrow book. She is known to write genre benders, which are books that you can't quite place into one category or another. And I felt like that was definitely true of Starling House. But I do think the term that fits it the best is probably Southern Gothic. So we meet Opal, a young 20-something who's living in a motel, trying to care for her teen brother. Their small Kentucky town is haunted by the Starling House and its mysterious caretaker. Opal finds herself inexplicably drawn to the house and begins working there as a housekeeper. From there, our story dives into spooky fantasy worlds, a little bit of historical fiction, lots of family drama. I especially loved the relationship between Opal and her brother. And I really enjoyed Opal as a heroine, but easily my favorite character was the house itself. Who doesn't love a haunted house? This would be a great read for those who want like those kind of spooky October vibes, but not so much fans of actual horror, because while it does get scary, it never really gets super violent or super into horror. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Probably my favorite read of the year.
Alrighty, so I'm going to talk about Marryground, and I just want to preface this. This is actually a young adult graphic novel, but I definitely felt it was more adult. So Marryground is an international graphic novel, now written in 3 different languages. The first edition was written in Italian, and the English version came out this year. So it was written by Sirio Rossi and illustrated by Angenis Innocente, and then translated by Carla Roncelli did Montenero. I probably butchered all those. I'm so sorry. And this story is actually set in Bologna, Italy, which is north of Florence, Italy, and follows the relationships of 10 young people, really just trying to figure out their current situations dealing with love and romance. So each short story connects to the next, and the title pretty much gives it away because it slightly feels like you're going on a merry-go-round and you kind of see the intersectionality of all these relationships. They're not exactly friends, but they're not exactly enemies either. And the reason why I actually love this graphic novel so much is it explores modern dating, but it has also a classic romantic feel to it. Some of these stories are sweet, but some are a little bitter. And it's easy to read if you're a beginner at graphic novels. It's beautifully illustrated. And the one thing I also liked about it is it's also inclusive of the LGBTQ community. And you really read this book and you hope the best for all these individuals in it. So I definitely recommend Merry-Go-Round if you're feeling a little nostalgic, but don't want to read an entire romance novel.
Okay, this is Their Vicious Games. This is a teen book, but is great for adult readers. This is definitely one of my favorite books of the year that I could not stop talking about. This is a cross between like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, and Squid Games. So it's a thriller mystery. If you've never seen either of those, that's okay. If you like thriller mysteries, you'll love it. This is about a girl named Adina who has always gone to a prestigious academy, a school with mostly rich kids, but Adina is not. She's had to work hard for what she has and to be where she is now. She's usually perfect because she has to be, but one slip up has her Ivy League education taken away from her. Her only shot to get it back is to compete in something called the Finish, which is like a high stakes contest, which it's not advertised that way, but a high stakes contest sponsored by the town's founding family. They take in 12 young, ambitious women with promise, and they're selected to compete in 3 mysterious events: the Ride, the Raid, and the Royale. It doesn't sound as bad, but when Adina gets there, she finds out that this competition is nothing like what it seems. She's going to have to fight hard to even make it out of this competition alive. But if she does make it out alive, she'll be granted entry into the Remington family, whose wealth and power can open any door, including that door back into college. Will she be able to make it out? You'll have to read it to find out. I loved this book so much, I literally couldn't stop telling people about it. So if you haven't read it already, please read Their Vicious Games.
Okay, so we didn't have time to talk about all the books we wanted to talk about. So really quickly, we just wanted to remind you of some of the books that we've talked about a lot this year, and so have many others. Hello, Beautiful is an amazing selection for book clubs and perfect for fans of character-driven books. Go as a River is historical fiction written by a Colorado author and set in Colorado, about the town of Iona, Colorado, which no longer exists because it's under the Blue Mesa Reservoir. Tom Lake is by the renowned Ann Patchett, and also the audiobook is narrated by Meryl Streep. So, I mean, how can you go wrong with that? All That Is Mine, I Carry With Me. This was a huge favorite of Julia, our fiction buyer, who could not be here today, but she wanted us to recommend this also, from the author of Defending Jacob. And lastly,
and Good Night, Irene by Luis Alberto Urrea. It is set during World War II. It's a wonderful historical fiction book set during World War II. I know many of us don't want to read any more World War II, but this is really worth a read. It's based on the life of the author's mother, who worked for the Red Cross on the front lines during the war. And the ending will leave an emotional impact. Great book.
If that did not fill up your to-be-read shelf quite enough, join us on January 6th at 10 a.m. at Coble Library. We'll be doing a New Year's New Book presentation focusing on upcoming books for 2024. So thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy some of these books.